Scott Burnside, ESPN.com, alongside Frank Provenzano, longtime NHL executive, 17 years, 3 different teams, and now you've joined ESPN's trade coverage. Welcome.
Thank you.
I will say this before we get going. We're going to talk about the Chicago Blackhawks, but you might have the nicest tie among the team members now here at ESPN.
I think so. I think I'm really styling it here.
Yes, well, you definitely are, even though it did take you an hour to tie it. Frank, let's talk a little bit about the Chicago Blackhawks. I think of all the teams in the final 4 or 5 days leading up to the trade deadline weekend, the Chicago Blackhawks viewpoint probably changed the greatest, obviously with Patrick Kane going on long-term injury. It's a broken clavicle, not expected back until late May. Obviously Stan Bowman, the GM there, feeling the need to make a bold move. And I think in first acquiring Kimmo Timonen from the Philadelphia Flyers, veteran defenseman who's missed all season with blood clotting issues, and then going out and getting Antoine Vermette, I think it's fair to say probably the highest profile or the most sought after forward in the rental market. What was your overall take on how the Blackhawks approached the last few days?
I think the Blackhawks are in a tough spot a little bit because, you know, they're a team that's clearly in their championship competition window, but they've also lost a key piece of their puzzle in the Patrick Kane injury. So I think for them, you know, it's a risk-return thing. They're trying to keep it going without giving too much away and mortgaging too much of the future. And that's a really hard thing for an organization to do, is to say, should we kind of treat this year as a blip on the radar, or should we do everything we can to potentially, you know, get back to the Stanley Cup final and compete for a cup again?
Well, I mean, this is the whole trade market has been interesting this year. I think, you know, we saw Evander Kane traded, obviously a potential high-impact player, but won't play again this season. There aren't any Marian Hosses. There's not an Ilya Kovalchuk this year that, you know, was out there, and we certainly don't expect that to happen by Monday afternoon. What do you think of Antoine Vermette and his potential? You know, no one's expecting him to take Patrick Kane's place. The man was near the top of the scoring list when he went down. But is there a danger in maybe overvaluing or overestimating the impact that Antoine Vermette can have on that team down the stretch and into the playoffs?
I think there is. I doubt Chicago has overestimated it. I think they're well aware of what they're getting, and they're getting depth at you know, the forward position that in come playoff time is important. You know, the interesting one for me was the Kimmo Timonen one, right, because it's a total X factor there. Can he return to the level that he has played at? And if he does, that's a huge potential add to their back line. But he, like you said, he missed the significant amount of time with a significant health issue. Well,
let me ask you this then. If you look at the Chicago Blackhawks now, my guess is they're going to play the St. Louis Blues in the first round. I think that's how it's certainly headed down, you know, as we head into the last 19 or 20 games. Do you like the Chicago Blackhawks team right now with the addition of Kimmo Timonen, with the addition of Antoine Vermette? Could they beat the St. Louis Blues if you had to make that prediction right now, which is what I'm asking you to do?
Yeah, I like Chicago's team. I always have, but in this case, I would bet on St. Louis in this series. I think they're in their window, and it's almost, I get the sense there that they feel if we don't win with this group now, we're not going to, and there's a real sense of urgency there.
Good. Well, we'll see how it all turns out, and we, of course, hope you'll stay with ESPN.com for all of your trade coverage. For Frank Provenzano, I'm Scott Burnside, ESPN.com.